The Serpent Motif, Nagas and Kundalini. Part 1. The Coiled Energy, Awakening the Sleeping Serpent. In many traditions of Indian thought, the serpent is not merely a creature that slithers on the ground, but a symbol of profound spiritual power hidden within the human body. The concept of Kundalini depicts this energy as a coiled serpent, resting at the base of the spine, sleeping until awakened through disciplined practices. This imagery speaks to the idea that human beings hold within themselves immense reservoirs of untapped potential. The serpent lies dormant, coiled tightly, representing both the hidden danger of uncontrolled energy and the immense promise of its awakening. In this state, it is silent and unseen, yet alive and waiting. To awaken the serpent is to embark on a transformative journey that promises liberation, illumination, and union with the divine essence. The coiled serpent has inspired countless mystical interpretations throughout history, with ancient yogic texts describing its power as both terrifying and blissful. The coiling itself suggests cycles, eternity, and the continuity of energy that lies beneath the surface of ordinary awareness. Unlike external forces, Kundalini is portrayed as an inner reality, a hidden fire curled at the root of existence, waiting for the call of consciousness. Yogis describe it as Shakti, the primordial force, inseparable from the essence of life itself. When dormant, it sustains existence quietly. When awakened, it surges upward like lightning. Such imagery reinforces the paradoxical nature of the serpent, simultaneously fearsome and divine, reminding us that awakening requires courage and humility in equal measure. The serpent is never fully tamed, but rather guided through discipline and devotion. The awakening of Kundalini is often described as a process of spiritual ignition, a fire sparked by meditation, breath control, and devotion. This energy, when activated, rises through the subtle channels of the body, piercing centers of consciousness known as chakras. Each chakra is depicted as a lotus, closed until touched by the ascending serpent, which causes the petals to bloom. The journey upward is not merely symbolic, but said to bring about profound shifts in perception, health, and awareness. The serpent's movement from the base to the crown symbolizes the elevation of the human being from instinct and survival to transcendence and enlightenment. The serpent teaches that the most primal of energies, when transformed, becomes the highest force of unity with the cosmos. This imagery has also been understood in psychological terms, where the serpent represents the unconscious or repressed parts of the self. The coiling at the base suggests the layers of instinct, memory, and raw energy hidden in the depths of the psyche. The act of awakening then becomes a process of self-confrontation, where the individual faces both the shadows and the light of their inner being. Just as a snake sheds its skin, the aspirant undergoing Kundalini awakening must shed layers of ignorance, fear, and illusion. The rising serpent is thus a metaphor for transformation, urging the individual to embrace both suffering and joy as catalysts for growth. It is no coincidence that serpents appear across cultures as guardians of treasures, for here too the greatest treasure is the awakened self. Ancient texts caution that the serpent's power must be approached with reverence, as uncontrolled awakening can lead to imbalance or harm. Just as a serpent can strike when disturbed carelessly, Kundalini energy, when forced, can disturb the mind and body. Teachers insist that only disciplined practice, guided by wisdom, can ensure safe awakening. The serpent is not an enemy to be conquered, but a sacred force to be honored. It embodies both poison and nectar, death and rebirth, terror and ecstasy. This duality reflects the nature of spiritual awakening itself, which challenges the ego, dismantles illusions, and breaks boundaries. The coiled energy tests whether the seeker is prepared for the truth, for once the serpent rises, life is never the same again. Mythology often illustrates this force through stories of Nagas, the serpent beings that inhabit rivers, caves, and underworlds. These Nagas embody both protection and destruction, offering wisdom to those who approach them with respect, but danger to those who act with arrogance. In the same way, Kundalini acts as both guardian and guide within the human body. It protects the sacred centers of consciousness, only allowing passage when the seeker is ready. The symbolism of serpents encircling treasures in myth mirrors the way this energy guards the ultimate treasure of enlightenment. The serpent is not given freely but must be earned through devotion, discipline, and inner purification. Thus, awakening is not a sudden gift, but a gradual unveiling of what was always there. In yogic descriptions, the serpent at rest is said to be coiled 3.5 times, symbolizing cycles of birth, preservation, and dissolution, with the half coil signifying transcendence. These coils are more than just symbolic. They represent the rhythm of life itself, the spiraling dance of creation. The serpent sleep signifies the potentiality that underlies existence, dormant but not absent. When awakened, this potential manifests as a powerful current that propels the aspirant into higher states of consciousness. The imagery of rising energy through chakras resonates with the image of a snake uncoiling, stretching upward toward the sky, embodying the soul's yearning for liberation. Each stage of ascent is both a challenge and a blessing, requiring surrender as much as effort. Kundalini awakening is often described as both a personal and cosmic event. On the personal level, it transforms the individual's mind, emotions, and body, reshaping perception of self and reality. On the cosmic level, it connects the individual to the very pulse of the universe, revealing the unity behind all dualities. The serpent rising is not just one's personal journey, but the awakening of Shakti herself, the cosmic energy that dances through every atom of creation. When this energy reaches the crown of the head, the seeker experiences union with Shiva, the silent consciousness that underlies all existence. This union of Shakti and Shiva symbolizes the merging of energy and awareness, movement and stillness, the serpent and its source. Despite its mystical imagery, Kundalini is not meant to be distant or inaccessible. It is described as the very foundation of life, present in every breath, heartbeat, and thought. The serpent's slumber at the base of the spine is not absence, but presence in potential form, quietly shaping existence until the seeker chooses to awaken it. The practices of yoga, meditation, and devotion are the gentle calls that stir the serpent from its sleep. The process is slow, deliberate, and sacred, mirroring the patient uncoiling of the snake itself. Awakening is never forced but invited, like coaxing a hidden power into the light. The serpent motif thus teaches patience, humility, and reverence for the mysteries of life within. The serpent's upward movement through the chakras is often described as accompanied by visions, sensations, and deep inner experiences. Some speak of hearing inner sounds, seeing lights, or feeling heat and vibration as the energy ascends. These manifestations are understood as signs of transformation, the outer ripples of an inner awakening. Yet the true essence lies not in the experiences themselves, but in the changes they bring to awareness, greater clarity, compassion, and detachment from illusion. The serpent becomes a teacher, guiding the aspirant beyond attachment to visions and powers, toward the simplicity of union with the eternal. In this sense, the serpent is not a destination, but a pathway to truth. Ultimately, the coiled energy represents the paradox of human existence, an infinite potential bound within finite form. The serpent rests in every being, waiting not for fear or force, but for readiness and devotion. Its awakening is not an escape from life, but a deeper immersion into its mysteries, unveiling layers of reality hidden to the ordinary eye. The serpent rises, and with it rises awareness, burning through ignorance and illuminating the path to liberation. To awaken the sleeping serpent is to awaken the deepest truth of what it means to be alive, to realize that within the coils of hidden energy lies the key to freedom and unity with the divine. The serpent sleeps, but once awakened it transforms everything. Part 2. Nagas in Myth, Guardians of Wisdom and Water. In the mythological traditions of South Asia, the figure of the Naga holds a place both mysterious and essential, embodying the serpentine energies that link earth, water, and hidden wisdom. Nagas are depicted as semi-divine beings, half human and half serpent, inhabiting rivers, lakes, and subterranean realms. Their presence in myths reflects humanity's awe of water as both life-giving and dangerous, as well as the serpent's power to guard what is sacred. Ancient texts and folklore describe Nagas as guardians of treasure, knowledge, and spiritual secrets, often appearing when thresholds between the human and divine are crossed. They are revered as protectors of cosmic order, yet feared for their ability to unleash floods or droughts if dishonored. The Naga thus embodies the paradox of water itself, nourishing yet destructive. In the Puranic stories, Nagas are described as residing in Patala, the netherworld beneath the earth, where they rule over vast palaces adorned with jewels and surrounded by flowing waters. This imagery connects them with both hidden wealth and subterranean power, linking the serpent to the mysteries beneath the surface of existence. Patala is not merely a place of darkness, but also a realm of hidden beauty and abundance, and the Nagas are its custodians. Myths portray them as beings of immense strength and spiritual significance, who, while often separate from the world of humans, influence it through their mastery over rain, fertility, and crops. The serpent beings thus bridge the seen and unseen realms, embodying the unseen forces that sustain and sometimes threaten human life. The Mahabharata gives one of the most detailed accounts of Naga lore, particularly in the story of King Janamajaya's snake sacrifice. This epic episode portrays the tension between humans and Nagas, where the king seeks vengeance against Takshaka, the Naga who caused his father's death. The sacrifice nearly leads to the destruction of the entire Naga race, until divine intervention halts the ritual. This tale reflects the precarious balance between humankind and the serpentine forces of nature. The Nagas are not enemies to be eradicated, but forces to be respected, for their survival is intertwined with the cosmic balance of life. The story emphasizes that attempts to dominate or annihilate them can lead to cosmic disruption, highlighting their role as guardians of equilibrium. Nagas also appear prominently in Buddhist traditions, where they play a protective role toward the Buddha and his teachings. One of the most famous accounts describes the Naga king Mukalinda, who sheltered the Buddha during a storm by spreading his great hood over him while coiling around him to provide warmth. In this moment, the serpent becomes not a threat, but a compassionate guardian, a being who recognizes and honors enlightenment. Buddhist art across Asia often depicts this scene, symbolizing the union of human wisdom and natural power. The Naga in this context becomes a protector of Dharma, a reminder that the forces of nature, when respected, align themselves with truth and awakening. Water, with its flowing and transformative qualities, is intimately linked with Naga mythology. As serpent deities, Nagas embody the unpredictable nature of rivers and rains. In agrarian societies dependent on monsoons, reverence toward Nagas reflected the recognition that water was both a blessing and a potential catastrophe. Nagas were invoked in rituals to bring rain during droughts or to calm floods when rivers swelled beyond control. Their association with lakes, wells, and springs reveals their role as guardians of sacred waters, ensuring purity and abundance for those who honored them. This connection highlights the deep symbolic link between serpents, fertility, and the cycles of life, where water serves as the medium of creation and renewal. In Hindu iconography, Nagas often appear as ornaments and companions to gods and goddesses, enhancing their divine aura. Vishnu is famously depicted reclining on the cosmic serpent Shesha, floating upon the primordial waters. Shisha, whose name means that which remains, represents the eternal foundation upon which the universe rests. The imagery of Vishnu resting on Shisha portrays the serpent as stability amidst chaos, the endless coil upon which creation rises and falls. Similarly, Shiva is often shown with serpents coiled around his neck and arms, symbolizing mastery over primal energy. These depictions emphasize the Naga not as a mere creature, but as a cosmic principle embodying endurance, continuity, and hidden wisdom. Legends also describe Nagas as keepers of hidden treasures, both material and spiritual. In folklore, they guard jewels that shine with their own light, symbolizing the luminous knowledge hidden beneath the surface of ordinary life. Access to these treasures often requires purity, respect, or initiation, reinforcing the idea that wisdom must be earned rather than seized. Stories across India and Southeast Asia speak of heroes encountering Nagas in caves, rivers, or mountains, with outcomes that depend on their humility or arrogance. Those who approach with reverence may be granted boons or teachings, while those who act with greed or disrespect may face the wrath of serpentine powers. In this way, Nagas serve as guardians of thresholds, ensuring that sacred knowledge remains protected from the unworthy. Across regions, Naga lore has evolved but retained its central themes of guardianship and connection to water. In Southeast Asian traditions, Nagas are woven deeply into cultural myths, often associated with river origins. In Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand, Nagas are revered as ancestors, protectors of communities, and bringers of fertility. The Mekong River itself is linked to Naga legends, with tales of serpent beings dwelling beneath its currents. Festivals and rituals still honor Nagas, asking for rain, prosperity, and protection. The continuity of these traditions shows how the serpent motif transcends boundaries, adapting to local landscapes while preserving its essence as a guardian of life's flow. The dual nature of Nagas, as both dangerous and benevolent, reflects humanity's relationship with water and hidden wisdom. Just as rivers can nurture or destroy, Nagas embody the balance between life and death, generosity and wrath. They teach that respect for the forces of nature and the mysteries of the unseen is essential for harmony. The stories of Nagas remind us that wisdom is not merely intellectual, but rooted in humility before powers greater than ourselves. Water, with its ability to cleanse, sustain, and overwhelm, mirrors the role of the Naga as both a giver and taker, a being that demands reverence for the sacred rhythms of existence. The serpent's association with water also ties directly to the symbolism of Kundalini, where the rising energy is described as flowing like a river or streaming upward through subtle channels. Just as Nagas dwell in rivers and lakes guarding their secrets, the coiled serpent of Kundalini guards the inner reservoirs of spiritual power. Both motifs emphasize the theme of guardianship, where access to hidden treasures requires discipline, reverence, and transformation. The Naga is thus not only a mythological figure but a reflection of the inner journey, where the seeker must learn to honor and navigate the forces that sustain life. Myth and mysticism converge in the serpent, which unites external nature with internal awakening. Nagas also reveal the cultural role of serpents as mediators between worlds, the human, the divine, and the subterranean. They dwell in liminal spaces, neither fully of the earth nor entirely celestial, embodying the thresholds between life and death, surface and depth, seen and unseen. In this sense, they symbolize the mystery of existence itself, reminding humanity of the layers beyond ordinary perception. Approaching Nagas in myth often signifies an encounter with deeper truths, where the seeker must face awe, fear, and reverence all at once. Their serpentine form, sinuous and elusive, mirrors the hidden currents of life that shape reality, reminding us that much lies beneath what is visible. Ultimately, the Naga as a guardian of wisdom and water encapsulates the serpent's role as a bridge between nature and spirit. Their presence in myth teaches that water, knowledge, and life itself are gifts to be honored, not possessed. They remind us that true wisdom cannot be seized, but must be approached with humility, patience, and devotion. To revere the Naga is to recognize that life flows from hidden depths, sustained by forces beyond our control. In their coiling, guarding, and dwelling in sacred waters, Nagas embody the mystery of existence, calling us to honor the balance of creation. The serpent motif, through the Naga, thus conveys that guardianship is both external and internal, a reminder that the treasures of life lie hidden, awaiting those who seek with reverence. Part 3. Kundalini and the Chakras, Power Rising Through the Spine. The image of Kundalini as a serpent rising through the human body has long been a central motif in yogic and tantric traditions. The serpent, coiled 3.5 times at the base of the spine, represents the immense reservoir of spiritual energy hidden within every individual. When awakened, it is said to ascend through a system of energy centers called chakras, each symbolized as a lotus with varying numbers of petals. This journey of the serpent is not merely a metaphor for physical vitality, but a profound map of consciousness itself, illustrating the ascent from instinct to enlightenment. The power rising through the spine is described as both transformative and perilous, capable of leading to liberation when guided with discipline and devotion, or imbalance when mishandled. The serpent's movement through the chakras signifies the unfolding of human potential. At the base of this journey lies the Muladhara, or root chakra, located at the base of the spine. It is depicted as a red lotus with 4 petals, associated with survival, stability, and connection to the earth. The coiled serpent rests here, asleep yet potent, embodying the most primal force of life. Awakening begins in this foundation, reminding us that spiritual growth cannot bypass the ground of existence. Just as a serpent coils in readiness, this energy waits in silence until stirred by disciplined practices such as meditation, pranayama, and mantra. The root chakra must be stable and secure for Kundalini to rise safely, for without grounding, the serpent's ascent can lead to disorientation. Thus, the journey begins with rooting in the physical and material world, recognizing that spirit cannot flourish without a strong base. The next stage is the Svadhisthana, or sacral chakra, located in the lower abdomen and symbolized by a 6-petaled lotus. Here the energy is connected with creativity, sexuality, and the flow of desire. As the serpent uncoils upward, it activates this center, transforming raw instincts into creative power. The water element associated with this chakra reflects its fluid and adaptive nature, emphasizing the serpent's role as a force of transformation. Just as water nourishes and reshapes, Kundalini rising here reshapes the aspirant's relationship to pleasure, emotion, and intimacy. When harmonized, it brings vitality, joy, and artistic expression. When imbalanced, it can lead to obsession or repression. The serpent teaches that desire itself is not an enemy, but a force to be purified and elevated, a current that can either bind or liberate depending on how it is guided. From there, the serpent ascends to the Manipura, the solar plexus chakra, symbolized by a 10-petaled yellow lotus. This center, linked with fire, governs willpower, determination, and personal strength. The serpent energy rising here ignites inner fire, fueling the ability to act, transform, and assert oneself. It is often described as the seat of self-mastery, where the raw power of the serpent becomes disciplined energy. Just as fire can cook food or destroy forests, the serpent's fire can illuminate or consume. Properly channeled, Kundalini at Manipura fosters confidence, clarity, and the capacity to overcome obstacles. Misused, it can burn through balance, leading to aggression or domination. The serpent's presence here reveals the paradox of power. It can either enslave the ego or dissolve it into a higher purpose. The rising serpent reminds us that true strength lies not in control over others, but in mastery of the self. The serpent then reaches the Anahata, or heart chakra, located at the center of the chest and symbolized by a 12-petaled green lotus. Associated with the air element, this chakra embodies compassion, love, and the balance between the earthly and spiritual realms. When Kundalini touches the heart, the energy transforms from personal ambition into devotion, empathy, and unconditional love. The serpent rising here bridges the lower, instinctual centers with the higher, spiritual ones. The coiled force that once represented primal survival becomes a current of tenderness, healing, and connection. In yogic descriptions, this is where the aspirant experiences the opening of divine love, transcending boundaries of self and other. Yet the serpent also warns that love must not become attachment or dependency. Its flight through the heart demands balance, reminding us that true compassion arises from freedom rather than need. Above the heart lies the Vishuddha, or throat chakra, depicted as a 16-petaled blue lotus, governing speech, truth, and expression. Associated with the element of ether, it represents the space in which sound and vibration resonate. As the serpent ascends to this level, the power of Kundalini refines itself into clarity of communication and purity of truth. The serpent's hiss itself becomes a symbol of sound, a vibration that transcends language and carries primal force. At this stage, the aspirant learns that words are not merely tools but sacred vibrations capable of creation and destruction. The serpent energy enables the voice to become an instrument of healing and alignment, expressing truth without fear. Imbalance here can manifest as lies, fear of speaking, or misuse of words, showing that the serpent's ascent is not merely automatic, but requires constant self-awareness. The next stage is the ajna, or third eye chakra, symbolized by a two-petaled indigo lotus located between the eyebrows. Associated with intuition, vision, and inner wisdom, this center represents the awakening of higher perception. As the serpent rises here, it is said to pierce the veil of illusion, granting insight into the subtle realities of existence. The serpent energy, once coiled at the base in primal instinct, now manifests as clarity of mind and perception beyond ordinary sight. Yogic texts describe this as the seat of the guru within, the place where knowledge arises not from external sources, but from direct experience of truth. The serpent becomes a guide, leading the aspirant through the labyrinth of illusion into inner clarity. Yet the third eye awakening also demands balance, as ungrounded visions can mislead or distort. The serpent insists that true insight arises from humility, not arrogance. Finally, the serpent reaches the Sahasrara, the crown chakra, depicted as a 1,000-petaled lotus at the top of the head. This center transcends the elements, embodying pure consciousness and union with the divine. When Kundalini pierces this lotus, the serpent completes its journey, uniting Shakti, the energy of creation, with Shiva, the consciousness of stillness. This union symbolizes liberation, where the individual self dissolves into universal awareness. The serpent's ascent through the spine culminates in this merging, often described as an experience of bliss, timelessness, and infinite light. At this stage, the serpent is no longer merely an inner energy, but the very flow of existence itself, dissolving distinctions between self and cosmos. The imagery of the 1,000-petaled lotus opening under the serpent's touch reflects the flowering of human consciousness into its highest potential. The ascent of Kundalini through the chakras is thus both a spiritual map and a profound psychological metaphor. Each chakra represents layers of human experience, from survival and desire to love, vision, and transcendence. The serpent, coiled and rising, embodies the potential within every being to move from instinctual life to divine union. Yet the journey is not linear or simple. Just as a serpent may pause, coil, or strike, Kundalini may rise and descend, testing the aspirant's readiness at each stage. The path demands patience, guidance, and humility, for awakening is as much about purification as about power. The serpent's rising is a reminder that spiritual growth is not an escape from the body or earth, but a transformation of them into instruments of higher awareness. In many accounts, the rising of Kundalini is accompanied by physical sensations, visions, or shifts in consciousness. Practitioners describe heat, vibrations, inner sounds, or luminous experiences as signs of the serpent's ascent. Yet, teachers emphasize that these are not the goal, but byproducts of a deeper transformation. The serpent motif warns against being ensnared by visions or powers, which can distract from true liberation. The real significance lies in the transformation of character, greater compassion, clarity, and surrender to the divine. The serpent rising through the chakras teaches that the highest spiritual achievements are inseparable from moral and emotional growth. The awakening serpent is not a tool for ego, but a path to dissolving it entirely in the light of unity. The imagery of Kundalini rising through the spine also connects the human body to the larger cosmos. The chakras mirror both the individual and universal planes of existence, suggesting that the serpent's ascent within reflects the unfolding of cosmic order. The spine becomes a sacred axis, a microcosmic Mount Meru, through which the serpent climbs toward transcendence. This vision places human life at the heart of cosmic play, reminding us that awakening is not separate from the universe, but its very expression. The serpent's journey through the chakras is thus both a personal and cosmic drama, a reminder that the energy flowing through us is the same that sustains stars, rivers, and galaxies. The serpent motif here reveals the unity of all life, bound together by the same current of energy rising and returning. Ultimately, the story of Kundalini and the chakras is a story of transformation. The serpent begins as a coiled force of survival and instinct, hidden in the depths of the body, and rises to become the radiant current of enlightenment. Each chakra represents both a challenge and a promise, a gate that must be opened by devotion, discipline, and surrender. The serpent's journey teaches that human life is not limited to instinct or intellect, but contains within it the potential for transcendence. Power rising through the spine is not a metaphor of domination but of integration, where every layer of being is illuminated. The serpent's ascent reminds us that within the human form lies the path to the infinite, waiting patiently in coiled silence until the seeker is ready to awaken. Part 4. Serpents in Temples, Fear or Reverence. The presence of serpents in temples across India and Southeast Asia reveals how deeply the serpent motif has been woven into the religious and cultural imagination. Far from being dismissed as mere creatures of fear, serpents became sanctified, inscribed into stone, and worshipped as manifestations of divine power. The very architecture of temples, with their coiling carvings and serpent-hooded deities, speaks to the duality of the serpent as both protector and potential destroyer. In these sacred spaces, serpents symbolize thresholds, guarding the passage between the mundane and the divine, ensuring that only those who approach with reverence may enter. The temple serpent embodies the tension between fear and devotion, reminding devotees that what is feared may also be revered when placed in the service of spiritual awakening. The Naga motif appears most prominently in temple gateways, steps, and sanctums, often carved into stone balustrades or wrapped around deities. The most famous examples can be found in Angkor Wat and other Khmer temples, where vast Naga balustrades extend like bridges, their many-headed hoods fanned out to form protective guardians of the sacred complex. These serpents were not merely ornamental, but symbolic of the cosmic ocean that surrounds the world, with the Naga serving as the bridge between realms. By walking across these serpent-formed bridges, devotees enacted a symbolic passage from the earthly into the divine, acknowledging that access to the sacred always requires crossing the threshold of serpent power. In this context, serpents inspire awe, not terror, as they safeguard the sanctity of the temple. In Indian temples, serpents are frequently associated with shrines to Shiva, Vishnu, and various goddess traditions. Vishnu is often depicted reclining upon the thousand-hooded serpent Ananta, or Shisha, whose coils form the bed upon which the god rests, floating on the cosmic waters. Sculptures and paintings of this imagery adorn temple walls, reminding worshippers that creation itself rests upon the serpent's back. In Shiva temples, serpents coil around the deity's neck and arms, symbolizing his mastery over primal energies and his fearless embrace of what others shun. These depictions dissolve the boundary between fear and reverence, showing that the serpent, though feared in nature, is exalted when placed in divine context. Temples teach that fear transforms into devotion when aligned with spiritual vision. The cult of serpent worship also exists independently in the form of Naga shrines, where devotees offer milk, flowers, and prayers, to stone carvings of coiled cobras. These shrines, often found beneath trees or near wells and rivers, represent the serpent as a deity in its own right, embodying fertility, rain, and protection. In many regions of India, serpent worship festivals such as Nag Panchami are celebrated, where serpents, both living and sculpted, are honored with offerings. Villagers pray to them for blessings of rain, good harvests, and protection from disease. The act of offering to serpents transforms fear of their venom into reverence for their power, suggesting that reverence is a way of negotiating with what is feared. In these practices, the serpent becomes a mediator between humans and nature's unpredictable forces. The motif of serpents in temples also carries a cosmological dimension, particularly in the depiction of the churning of the ocean, or Samudra Manthan, a myth central to Hindu lore. Temples often carve this myth onto their walls, showing gods and demons using the serpent Vasuki as the rope to churn the ocean of milk. Here the serpent becomes an instrument of creation, coiled around Mount Mandara, allowing the forces of the cosmos to produce nectar of immortality. The imagery is both awe-inspiring and unsettling, for the serpent, stretched between gods and demons, represents the power that sustains both good and evil. When devotees encounter this scene in temple art, they are reminded that the serpent's power is essential to creation itself, demanding both respect and fear. Buddhist temples also integrate serpents into their sacred art, particularly in Southeast Asia. The Naga king Mukalinda, who shielded the meditating Buddha with his hood, is a recurring motif in temple sculpture. Statues depict the Buddha seated in meditation, sheltered by the protective coils and hood of a serpent. This imagery transforms the serpent from a feared animal into a guardian of enlightenment, showing how the forces of nature align themselves with truth. Temples that display this image convey to devotees that enlightenment is not achieved by escaping nature, but by harmonizing with it. The Naga in Buddhist temples becomes a reminder that even the most feared of creatures recognizes and honors the awakened one, thus shifting perception from fear to reverence. The ambiguity of serpents in temple contexts often mirrors the ambiguity in human responses to the natural world. On the one hand, serpents are venomous, capable of sudden and fatal strikes, and their presence invokes primal fear. On the other hand, their ability to shed their skin, to move silently, and to dwell in hidden places made them symbols of rebirth, wisdom, and mystery. Temple builders captured this duality, ensuring that serpents were never reduced to simple decoration, but always carried a sacred weight. The serpent carved into stone is frozen in its most potent posture, its hood raised, fangs visible, yet it does not strike. It guards and warns simultaneously, inviting worshippers to approach with humility and reminding them that entry into the sacred requires overcoming fear. Some scholars argue that the serpent's temple presence also reflects ancient fertility cults that predated or merged with Vedic traditions. The association of serpents with rain, fertility, and crops meant that they were natural objects of worship in agrarian societies. By incorporating serpents into temple architecture and ritual, these older beliefs were sanctified within the broader religious framework. In this way, temples served as sites where local reverence for serpents was integrated into cosmic myths, elevating the snake from village deity to cosmic guardian. The serpent thus represents continuity between the local and the universal, embodying both the immediacy of survival and the vastness of divine order. The psychological impact of serpents in temples should also be considered. Temples are designed not merely as places of worship, but as spaces that transform consciousness. When a devotee walks past the coiled Naga balustrades, kneels before serpent idols, or gazes at images of gods attended by serpents, they are invited to confront their fears and transform them into reverence. The serpent becomes a mirror of the devotee's own subconscious, embodying hidden fears, desires, and powers. To bow before the serpent is to bow before the mysterious forces within oneself, acknowledging that liberation requires facing the depths of the psyche. The temple serpent thus operates on both outer and inner levels, guiding the devotee through thresholds of fear into the sanctuary of wisdom. The tension between fear and reverence is perhaps most evident in temple rituals involving live serpents. In some traditions, priests handle cobras or invite them into the temple precincts during festivals, offering them milk and prayers. Such acts dramatize the relationship between humans and serpents, showing that reverence transforms danger into blessing. Yet the potential danger never fully disappears, reminding participants of the serpent's untamed nature. This balance between respect and caution embodies the essence of the serpent motif. What is most feared is also what is most sacred, and true reverence requires acknowledging both aspects. The temple serpent is never domesticated. It remains wild, a reminder of the sacred power that resists human control. The endurance of serpents in temple architecture across centuries shows how deeply rooted the motif is in the human imagination. From the coiling Nagas of Angkor to the serpent-hooded Vishnu in Indian temples, from cobra shrines beneath sacred trees to Buddha statues sheltered by serpents, the imagery persists. It continues to evoke the same response it always has: awe mixed with fear, reverence tempered by caution. Temples preserve this ambiguity, ensuring that devotees never forget that the divine cannot be reduced to comfort or safety. The serpent remains a guardian of thresholds, keeping alive the mystery at the heart of spiritual life. Ultimately, serpents in temples reflect the universal truth that fear and reverence are not opposites but intertwined responses to the sacred. What we fear often conceals what we most need to respect, and what we revere often carries the power to destroy. The serpent's presence in temples embodies this paradox, challenging devotees to approach the divine not with arrogance but with humility. To stand before the serpent is to stand before life's mystery itself, coiled and watchful, ready to bless or to strike. The temple serpent thus teaches that the path to the divine passes through the transformation of fear into reverence, a lesson carved in stone and alive in the human heart. Part 5. Vasuki and the Churning of the Ocean, Poison and Immortality. Among the many serpent figures in Hindu mythology, Vasuki holds a place of immense importance as the king of the Nagas and the serpent, who became the rope in one of the greatest cosmic events, the churning of the ocean. Known as Samudra Manthan, this myth describes how gods and demons work together to churn the ocean of milk in order to extract amrita, the nectar of immortality. Vasuki, coiling his massive body around Mount Mandara, allowed himself to be pulled back and forth by devas and asuras, enduring pain and sacrifice for the sake of cosmic balance. Yet the event was not without peril, for the serpent's presence brought forth both poison and nectar. In this story, Vasuki becomes the embodiment of the paradox of the serpent motif: destruction and healing, death and immortality, poison and liberation. The myth begins with the Devas, weakened after being cursed by the sage Durvasa, who sought help from Vishnu to regain their strength. Vishnu advised them to churn the ocean of milk to obtain amrita, but the task was too great for the gods alone. They approached their rivals, the asuras, offering to share the nectar if they assisted in the endeavor. Thus, enemies united under necessity, using Mount Mandara as the churning rod. But a mountain alone could not serve the purpose. They needed a rope vast and strong enough to encircle it. Vasuki, the Naga king, was chosen. His immense coils wrapped around the mountain. The devas took hold of his tail while the asuras grasped his head, and the great churning began. With the serpent stretched painfully between them, a living cord binding together forces of creation and destruction. As the churning proceeded, immense treasures and beings emerged from the depths of the ocean. The goddess Lakshmi, the celestial elephant Airavata, the divine horse Uchchaishravas, and the moon itself. Yet the first substance to emerge was far from nectar. It was halahala, a deadly poison so virulent it threatened to annihilate the cosmos. The poison spread across the worlds, filling gods, demons, and mortals alike with terror. This moment reveals the serpent's duality, for the act of churning with Vasuki's body did not yield only blessings, but also danger. The serpent here embodies the truth that transformation and creation are never without risk. To reach nectar, one must first confront poison. The halahala symbolizes the hidden dangers of awakening powerful energies, mirroring the fears associated with Kundalini's uncontrolled rise. At this point, Shiva intervened. Compassionate toward creation, he gathered the poison into his hand and swallowed it, holding it in his throat to prevent its spread. The poison stained his neck blue, earning him the name Nilakantha, the blue-throated one. Shiva's act of absorbing the venom reflects the necessity of mastering destructive forces rather than denying them. In the myth, the serpent Vasuki is indirectly linked to this event, for it was through his involvement that the poison arose. Yet this was not a flaw, but part of the cosmic order. The serpent's presence revealed both the peril and the potential of transformation, showing that every ascent must pass through danger. Vasuki's role emphasizes that serpents are not simply harbingers of destruction, but catalysts for change, necessary even when their participation produces fearsome results. After the poison was contained, the churning continued, eventually producing the much-desired amrita. Vishnu, taking the form of the enchanting Mohini, distributed the nectar to the devas, ensuring that the asuras were tricked and deprived of its gift. With the consumption of amrita, the gods regained their strength and secured their immortality. Here the serpent Vasuki stands at the very heart of the cosmic drama, his body the axis of effort through which immortality was made possible. Though he himself did not consume the nectar, his sacrifice enabled others to achieve divine power. This dynamic reflects the paradox of the serpent as both servant and master, suffering and transcendent, embodying the tension between what must be endured and what is ultimately gained. The imagery of Vasuki's role has deep symbolic resonance. The serpent stretched across the mountain represents the channel of energy binding heaven and earth, gods and demons, order and chaos. His body, pulled back and forth, evokes the currents of Kundalini energy rising and descending through the chakras, producing both ecstasy and pain. Just as the serpent energy in the spine must be handled with care, Vasuki's involvement shows that divine power cannot be accessed without danger. The poison represents the karmic residues and inner toxins stirred when energy rises, while the nectar symbolizes the bliss of liberation when those obstacles are transformed. The myth thus functions not only as cosmic history but also as allegory for the inner path of awakening. It is significant that Vasuki was willing to serve despite the suffering involved. Myth portrays him as consenting to be the rope, even though he knew the cost. His willingness reflects the serpent's nature as both guardian and sacrificer, embodying the cosmic principle that energy must move, must be pulled, stretched, and tested to release creation's treasures. The burning produced by his breath during the churning scorched the asuras, who held his head, while the devas who held his tail were spared the worst of the fumes. This detail reinforces the moral dimension of the myth, suggesting that alignment with divine order protects, while greed and arrogance bring suffering. Vasuki's breath thus becomes a purifying fire, a reminder that the serpent tests those who would harness his strength. Temples and art across India have immortalized this myth, particularly in grand carvings of the Samudra Manthan. At Angkor Wat, a massive relief shows devas and asuras, lined up along Vasuki's immense coils, pulling in unison while the serpent undulates around the mountain. His body is stretched yet steady, his hood raised in regal poise, embodying both pain and majesty. This depiction captures the essence of the serpent's paradox, tortured yet transcendent, strained yet central to the unfolding of cosmic events. Worshippers encountering these carvings are reminded that the path to immortality is paved with trials, and that even divine beings require the serpent's aid to achieve their goal. The story of Vasuki also resonates with broader serpent symbolism across traditions. In Greek mythology, serpents often guard treasures, while in alchemical traditions, the serpent embodies both venom and elixir. The Halahala and Amrita mirror this archetypal pattern, where poison and cure are intertwined. The serpent is never simply one or the other, but holds within itself the power of both. In the human body, Kundalini energy is described in similar terms. When awakened improperly, it can cause turmoil. But when guided, it leads to bliss and illumination. Vasuki's role in the churning of the ocean thus becomes a mythic template for the risks and rewards of spiritual awakening, reminding aspirants that the path requires courage, discipline, and divine grace. The poison also carries symbolic weight as the hidden impurities of the human condition, anger, greed, ignorance, that must be confronted when spiritual energy is stirred. Just as Shiva swallowed the poison, the aspirant must learn to face and contain these forces without letting them overwhelm. The nectar, meanwhile, symbolizes the immortal consciousness beyond death and decay, attainable only after the poison is integrated. The serpent Vasuki, stretched between gods and demons, shows that this process requires tension, effort, and the balancing of opposing forces. Only through the struggle of dualities does the hidden elixir reveal itself. The serpent becomes the mediator, binding opposites together in a dynamic struggle that births immortality. In devotional traditions, Vasuki is remembered not only for his role in the churning, but also for his close association with Shiva. He is often depicted as coiled around the god's neck, a sign of Shiva's mastery over the primal energies of the universe. This imagery recalls his role in Samudra Manthan, where his presence brought both poison and nectar. By resting on Shiva, Vasuki signifies that the serpent's dual powers are contained within divine consciousness. The same serpent that once produced destruction is now a garland of protection, showing that when energy is mastered, it no longer threatens, but empowers. The temple depictions of Shiva with Vasuki echo this transformation, inviting devotees to revere the serpent not with fear, but with respect for its hidden wisdom. The myth of Vasuki and the churning of the ocean reveals the serpent as an archetype of sacrifice, danger, and transcendence. His body made possible the quest for immortality, yet it also brought forth the most deadly poison. This duality captures the essence of the serpent motif, where fear and reverence, death and life, are inseparably bound. Vasuki is not a passive participant, but a cosmic force, embodying the truth that creation itself requires tension, struggle, and risk. Without his coiling body, there would be no nectar. Without his presence, there would be no poison to test the gods. He is the reminder that every treasure demands a price, and that only those who endure the serpent's trial may drink the nectar of immortality. Ultimately, the story of Vasuki and the Samudra Manthan is not only a cosmic myth, but a reflection of the human journey. In every aspirant, the serpent energy must be awakened, stretched, and pulled through the trials of life. Poison must surface before nectar can flow, and only by facing fear can immortality be tasted. Vasuki embodies this eternal truth, showing that the serpent is not merely an object of dread, but the very bridge between suffering and liberation. His coiling form, stretched across gods and demons alike, reminds us that life itself is a churning, a constant movement between opposites. From this struggle arises the nectar of wisdom, and at its heart coils the serpent, eternal guardian of transformation. Part 6. Serpent Queens, Myths of Manasa and Mystical Power. In the tapestry of serpent mythology in South Asia, few figures are as fascinating and multi-layered as the Serpent Queens. Among them, the goddess Manasa occupies a central place, revered in Bengal and parts of northeastern India as the Queen of Serpents, a deity of fertility, healing, and mystical power. Unlike the male serpent kings, such as Vasuki or Shisha, Manasa embodies a distinctly feminine manifestation of the serpent motif, blending protection with vengeance, healing with poison, and mystical wisdom with the demands of devotion. Her myths present her as both nurturer and avenger, embodying the ambivalent power of the serpent, which can bless or curse, heal or kill. The Serpent Queen's story is not simply mythological ornament, but a reflection of deeper truths about the serpent, as a symbol of transformative power and the role of feminine divinity in guarding life's mysteries. Manasa is often portrayed as a goddess who rose to prominence despite resistance, both from mortals and from other deities. According to myth, she is considered the daughter of Shiva, born from his seed and nurtured by sage Kashyapa's wife, or in other versions, raised by Vasuki, the Serpent King. This ambiguous origin already places her in liminal space, neither fully celestial nor fully earthly, embodying the in-between state that serpents so often symbolize. She is depicted as a beautiful woman, often with snakes coiling around her arms, or crowned by a hooded cobra. This imagery makes her immediately recognizable as one who embodies both danger and grace. Unlike other deities associated with prosperity or war, her realm is serpents, poison, fertility, and the unseen forces that govern health and mortality. The most famous cycle of stories about Manasa comes from the medieval Bengali Manasa Mongol poems, which recount her struggle to establish worship and recognition. These stories depict her as both a compassionate goddess and a fierce figure who punishes those who refuse her reverence. Chief among her opponents is Chand Saudagar, a wealthy merchant devoted to Shiva, who resists acknowledging her divinity. In these tales, Manasa demands worship not merely for her own pride, but as a test of humility, reminding mortals that no aspect of the divine, however feared, can be ignored. When Chand refuses to worship her, she unleashes her serpents, bringing calamities upon his family and trade. Yet the tales also portray her as a healer, restoring those who turn to her with faith, showing that her vengeance is not blind but corrective, seeking recognition of her power. In one well-known episode, Manasa causes the death of all 6 sons of Chansaudagar, striking at his pride and devotion to Shiva. Yet through her interventions, his daughter-in-law Bahula undertakes a mystical journey to restore her husband's life, eventually leading to reconciliation between Manasa and Chand. The myth dramatizes the Serpent Queen's demand for reverence, her power to wound and heal, and the human struggle to accept divine forces that inspire fear. Unlike gods who embody only benevolence, Manasa insists on being recognized in her dual nature. Her serpents are not tamed, but unleashed as instruments of her will, emphasizing that reverence for the serpent motif must encompass both its nurturing and destructive aspects. Through Manasa, the serpent becomes an image of power that resists domestication. The Serpent Queen is also intimately tied to fertility and health, embodying the power of serpents as guardians of life-giving forces. In agrarian societies where snake bites were a daily threat and rains determined survival, her worship reflected both practical and spiritual concerns. Devotees sought her protection against venom, praying for healing and immunity. Farmers invoked her blessings for fertile fields, aligning her serpentine energy with the fertility of the soil. The serpent's association with water and fertility is amplified in Manasa's myth, as her power extends over rivers, rains, and harvests. She was not only the guardian of individuals, but of entire communities, ensuring their survival in the face of nature's unpredictable cycles. Her cult reveals how serpent reverence bridged fear of venom with gratitude for fertility, making her both feared and indispensable. Beyond her role as protector, Manasa embodies mystical wisdom, the serpent's connection to hidden knowledge. In many traditions, serpents are seen as keepers of secrets, guarding treasures beneath the earth, or symbolizing knowledge lying dormant until awakened. Manasa, as Serpent Queen, represents access to this esoteric wisdom, offering insight into the mysteries of life, death, and transformation. Her serpents are not only threats, but also guides, leading devotees towards spiritual growth. By demanding worship, she compels mortals to confront their fear of the unknown, which is itself a step toward mystical knowledge. The Serpent Queen thus becomes a figure of initiation, forcing her followers to embrace the paradoxical truth that fear itself is a teacher. The feminine nature of Manasa's power also brings forward the theme of Shakti, the divine feminine energy that animates the cosmos. In many Tantric traditions, Kundalini, the serpent power coiled at the base of the spine, is itself seen as Shakti awaiting union with Shiva. Manasa's serpent queenship resonates with this motif, representing the feminine current of energy that both sustains and transforms. Her demand for recognition mirrors the necessity of honoring Shakti in spiritual practice, without which awakening remains incomplete. The myths of her struggle for worship can be read symbolically as humanity's resistance to acknowledging the feminine aspect of divinity, and her eventual triumph represents the integration of this power into spiritual and communal life. The imagery of Manasa surrounded by serpents also connects her to the broader iconography of serpent queens across traditions. In Buddhist lore, serpent queens, or naginis, are often depicted as guardians of treasures or protectors of sacred texts. Their presence conveys the serpent's dual role as both obstacle and guide, threatening those who approach without reverence while offering blessings to the devoted. In Southeast Asian traditions, Serpent Queens guard rivers and caves, embodying fertility and rain. Manasa fits into this larger archetype of the Serpent Queen, as a liminal guardian, mediating between the seen and unseen worlds. By linking her power to serpents, myths emphasize that what is feared in nature is also a source of sacred strength. Temples and folk shrines dedicated to Manasa highlight this duality. Her shrines often stand near rivers or beneath sacred trees, where stone carvings of serpents are offered milk and flowers by devotees. These rituals reflect a tangible connection to the natural world, recognizing that reverence for serpents is also reverence for the forces of fertility, water, and life itself. In Bengal, Manasa worship continues as part of annual festivals, where songs and dances retell her myths, blending devotion with storytelling. The endurance of her cult shows how deeply embedded the Serpent Queen remains in cultural memory, a living symbol of the balance between fear and reverence. Her myths also reveal a profound psychological dimension. Manasa embodies the human struggle with forces that cannot be controlled but must be acknowledged. The Serpent Queen is not a goddess who offers comfort without challenge. She confronts devotees with their pride, fear, and resistance. By punishing refusal and rewarding reverence, she dramatizes the necessity of humility before forces greater than oneself. Her serpents represent the hidden dangers within and without, forces that can destroy when ignored but heal when honored. In this way, her mythology serves as a psychological allegory for the acceptance of life's paradoxes, where pain and healing, poison and nectar, are inseparable. The motif of Serpent Queens extends beyond Manasa into other traditions, such as the figure of Ulupi in the Mahabharata, a Naga princess who marries Arjuna and plays a role in restoring his son to life. Ulupi, like Manasa, represents the intertwining of serpentine power with human destiny, guiding heroes through trials while embodying wisdom and mystical authority. These Serpent Queens collectively highlight the feminine aspect of serpentine symbolism, balancing the masculine serpent kings like Vasuki and Shisha. They remind us that the serpent's power is not only cosmic but relational, manifesting in stories of family, love, healing, and revenge. Through them, the serpent motif becomes a living presence in myth, not abstract, but intimately human. Ultimately, the myths of Manasa and other Serpent Queens reveal the serpent as a symbol of mystical power that is neither wholly benevolent nor purely malevolent. The Serpent Queen is a paradoxical figure, embodying both the danger of venom and the gift of healing, the wrath of punishment and the grace of protection. Through her, we see the serpent not as a creature to be feared or worshipped alone, but as a mirror of life's ambivalence. The demand she makes for reverence is the same demand the natural world makes of humanity. Respect what you cannot control, honor what you depend upon, and recognize that fear and blessing are intertwined. In the figure of Manasa, the serpent motif finds one of its most compelling expressions. She is not merely a goddess of snakes, but a guardian of thresholds, a force of Shakti, and a queen who insists on recognition of the serpent's true nature. Her myths remind us that mystical power often comes clothed in paradox, requiring us to confront both our terror and our reverence. The Serpent Queens, with their coiled hoods and unyielding gaze, embody the eternal lesson of the serpent motif, that wisdom lies hidden in the very forces we fear, and that to embrace them is to unlock the power of transformation. Part 7. Tantric Symbolism, the Serpent as Transformation. In the intricate world of Tantra, few symbols carry as much weight and complexity as the serpent. While serpents appear across world mythologies as creatures of power, mystery, and ambivalence, in Tantra, they acquire a unique role as embodiments of energy, transformation, and awakening. The serpent here is not only a creature of the earth, but a cosmic principle, a metaphor for the hidden energies that animate the body and the universe alike. Within Tantric philosophy, the serpent signifies both the dangers of raw, untamed power and the promise of liberation when that power is harnessed. It represents the coiled force of Kundalini resting at the base of the spine, the transformative energy that can destroy ignorance and open the gateways to higher consciousness. In this sense, the serpent is transformation itself, both feared and revered. The Tantric serpent is first and foremost associated with Kundalini Shakti, the latent energy within every individual. Described as a serpent coiled 3.5 times at the root of the spine, Kundalini embodies potential that is both terrifying and transcendent. The coiling suggests dormancy, a force at rest yet also readiness, for the serpent can strike or rise at any moment. In Tantra, awakening Kundalini is not merely about releasing energy, but about transforming every level of being, body, mind, and spirit. The serpent's rise through the chakras is the very map of this transformation, illustrating how primal instinct can evolve into spiritual illumination. The serpent thus becomes the perfect tantric symbol, sensual, dangerous, cyclical, and regenerative, embodying the dual forces of life and death that Tantra seeks to integrate rather than deny. One of the central features of Tantric symbolism is its embrace of paradox, and the serpent embodies this more vividly than almost any other image. Serpents inspire fear through their venom, yet their venom can also heal in small doses. They shed their skin, dying and being reborn, suggesting transformation and renewal. They dwell in hidden places, underground, in water, beneath stones, mirroring the hidden depths of the psyche and the unseen reservoirs of energy in the subtle body. In Tantra, this paradox is not accidental, but essential. The path to liberation requires confronting what is feared, recognizing that within danger lies the seed of transcendence. The serpent represents the shadow and the light, the poison and the nectar, the obstacle and the path itself. It is transformation through contradiction, embodying the tantric principle that nothing is excluded from the sacred. The sexual dimension of the serpent in Tantra also cannot be ignored. Serpents have long been associated with fertility, desire, and primal energy, and in tantric practice, this energy is not repressed, but transmuted. Kundalini is often described as erotic power rising through the spine, awakening the chakras, and merging with divine consciousness at the crown. This union of Shakti, the feminine force embodied in the serpent, with Shiva, the pure awareness at the crown, represents the culmination of tantric practice. Sexual energy here is not mere indulgence but a sacred current, the raw force of life itself, which when guided becomes the vehicle of transformation. The serpent, winding upward, reflects this movement of desire into devotion, instinct into illumination. The serpent's association with transformation is also expressed through its shedding of skin. For tantric practitioners, this act symbolizes the shedding of ignorance, attachment, and the false self. Just as the serpent leaves behind its old skin, the aspirant undergoing Kundalini awakening leaves behind layers of illusion, revealing a truer self beneath. This cyclical act of renewal highlights the serpent's role as a guide through the cycles of death and rebirth, teaching that transformation is not linear, but continuous. Every rise of energy, every breakthrough in awareness, is another shedding of skin, another death to the old self. The serpent embodies this ongoing process, reminding practitioners that transformation is not a single event, but a lifelong unfolding. In Tantric iconography, serpents appear not only as symbols of Kundalini, but as attendants of deities, ornaments, and protective forces. Shiva, the Lord of Tantra, is often depicted with serpents coiled around his neck, arms, and hair. These serpents signify his mastery over primal energies, his fearless embrace of what others fear. In this imagery, serpents cease to be threats and become adornments, integrated into the divine form. The tantric lesson here is clear. Transformation comes not from avoiding fear or suppressing desire, but from wearing them openly, integrating them into spiritual practice. The serpent coiled on Shiva's body is the very energy that others dread, now tamed and sanctified, a symbol of transformation accomplished through union with the divine. Serpents also feature prominently in tantric rituals, where they are invoked as protectors and guardians of thresholds. Just as Nagas guard treasures in myth, serpents in Tantric symbolism guard the inner treasures of consciousness. To awaken Kundalini, the aspirant must pass through the serpent's domain, confronting fear, desire, and the raw power of energy itself. The serpent thus serves as both obstacle and key. It resists awakening until the practitioner is ready, and then it becomes the very force that propels them forward. This dual role reflects the transformative essence of the serpent in Tantra, guarding what is sacred until reverence, discipline, and readiness are achieved. Transformation requires passing through danger, and the serpent ensures that this passage is never taken lightly. The Tantric serpent also embodies the cyclical and spiraling nature of energy. Its movement is not straight, but winding, coiling, uncoiling, and ascending in curves. This spiral mirrors the movements of the cosmos, from galaxies to DNA, all reflecting the serpent's pattern. The rising of Kundalini is thus not simply vertical, but spiral, awakening each chakra in a dance of ascent. The serpent's form is echoed in yantras and mandalas, geometric patterns used in tantric practice, where spirals and circles represent the movement of energy. The serpent becomes not only a creature, but a cosmic diagram, a living symbol of how energy flows and transforms. To meditate upon the serpent is to meditate upon the patterns of existence itself, seeing in its coils the rhythm of creation and dissolution. Fear of the serpent is an essential part of its symbolism in Tantra. Practitioners are warned that Kundalini awakening, if forced or mishandled, can lead to imbalance, mental turmoil, or even destruction. This fear mirrors the natural fear of serpents, whose venom can kill. Yet Tantra teaches that fear must be confronted, for only by facing the serpent can one access its transformative power. This does not mean recklessness, but respect. The serpent must be awakened with reverence, patience, and guidance. The danger is real, yet it is precisely this danger that gives the serpent its transformative force. By holding together fear and reverence, Tantra turns the serpent into a teacher of humility, discipline, and courage. The transformative role of the serpent also extends to the dissolution of dualities. In Tantra, liberation is not achieved by rejecting the body or the world, but by transcending opposites, male and female, pleasure and pain, life and death. The serpent embodies this dissolution, being both feared and worshipped, both deadly and healing. As Kundalini rises, it pierces through the chakras, dissolving dualities at each level, survival and transcendence, desire and purity, power and surrender. By the time it reaches the crown, all dualities are merged in the union of Shakti and Shiva. The serpent, once coiled in dormancy, becomes the bridge to unity, Transformation here is not escape, but integration. The serpent, teaching that liberation comes from embracing opposites until they reveal their hidden unity. The serpent's role in Tantra also resonates with the larger Indian understanding of Nagas, serpent beings associated with water, fertility, and wisdom. Just as Nagas guard sacred waters and treasures, Kundalini as serpent guards the hidden treasure of enlightenment within. In both cases, the serpent is a liminal figure, dwelling in thresholds and guarding passages. The aspirant must approach with respect, recognizing that the serpent's blessing comes only after trials. This parallel shows how Tantric symbolism draws upon older serpent motifs, deepening them into a map of inner transformation. The serpent thus bridges mythology and mysticism, culture and consciousness, uniting outer stories with inner experiences. At the deepest level, the serpent in Tantra represents transformation not as an abstract ideal, but as a lived, embodied reality. It teaches that energy is the substance of transformation, that what is feared can become the path, that poison itself can be nectar when transmuted. The serpent embodies the radical tantric vision that nothing is outside the sacred, not fear, not desire, not death. By awakening the serpent, the aspirant awakens to this truth, experiencing transformation not as escape, but as expansion. The coils of the serpent are the coils of existence, and to rise through them is to rise into the fullness of life. Ultimately, the serpent in Tantric symbolism is the emblem of transformation because it refuses simplicity. It is dangerous yet healing, primal yet divine, hidden yet revealing, feared yet worshipped. To walk the Tantric path is to walk with the serpent, to allow its coiled energy to awaken and rise, transforming the self at every level. The serpent's journey, from the base of the spine to the crown of the head, is the aspirant's journey from ignorance to enlightenment, from duality to unity. Through its paradoxes, the serpent teaches that transformation is not about denial, but about integration, not about fleeing fear, but about embracing it. In the end, the serpent is not only the symbol of transformation, it is transformation itself, the eternal current of energy that coils, rises, and reveals the truth of liberation.